when I woke up, my entire world had changed.
I think her journey offers hope and promise to everybody who is hurting, but even particularly those who go through the unthinkable in some of the darkest hours that we'll ever face in this life.
The unthinkable, the darkest hours of our lives. My guest today faces the unthinkable. She lost her identity. She lost her future. And as a pastor's wife, her family was faithfully following God. But still, tragedy struck. And she would begin the process of holding on while facing the unthinkable. I'm Jake McCandless, and you're listening to Hold On, a podcast where I explore the dynamics of faith in our modern world and encourage you to hold on and keep the faith. So far in the previous episodes, we've defined the crisis, the epidemic of many leaving the faith. And we've talked about that there's hope to return, and we've shared a story of one who has returned. We're so blessed, and I'm so humbled to have the opportunity to play a part in sharing this story. Laura is a speaker, frequently speaks at women's events, and she has just finished a new book that releases in the middle of 2019 called Songs from a Wounded Heart. The book shares her story and the story of her family. As she said, her life changed in an instant. Through that process, through that great tragedy, and through the continual process, Laura has been an example of what it means to hang on to your faith. And as Rita Thomas, a friend of Laura's and a friend of mine, and the editor of our Hold On Stories, shared, this story is powerful. And speaking of stories, you can catch Rita's stories here at the holdonpodcast.com website and at standfirmministries.com. Laura has not only walked through this great unthinkable tragedy for now 14 years, she has also spoken about it at many events across the country, and she's written about it in her new book. And so I just asked her to share. Let's listen in as she takes us through this journey.
I met J.L. Jones in college. Believe it or not, we had both gone to the same high school and the same junior high and not ever met each other. He was 1 year ahead of me in school, and we laughed about it later that maybe it was our guardian angel's job to keep us separated in high school until he came to a more living relationship with the Lord. So we met, fell in love, got engaged, and then God began to draw Jay towards the ministry. And while we were engaged, he decided that he wanted to follow the Lord into the pastorate. Now, we made this wonderful plan and decided that we were going to be missionaries for a couple of years in the United States, and then we were going to go to seminary, and then we were going to go into the pastorate. So it was a long, 5-6 year plan.
A master plan.
Yeah. God never follows our master plan.
That's right. For some reason he didn't get the notes, does he?
He didn't. So we were volunteering at a little church not too far from Kansas State University where we were finishing up our bachelor's degrees. And so we started filling out, we got married, and then we started filling out the application for missions. And we needed to contact a man who is the one that got us started volunteering at that little church. And we were going to use him as a reference on our application. When we called him, he said, "You guys have been on our mind, and I can't shake this. I know it doesn't make any sense, but I believe that God wants you to come and pastor this little church where you've been volunteering." We were like, what? I was 21, he was 22. We had no experience and we had no training in the ministry other than volunteering.
Yeah.
So we moved to that little town. So the little church had started growing, and we were growing up, and then we were ready to start our family. So in 1990, Janessa was born into our home, little blonde-haired, green-eyed bundle of joy. And she just always was a fun child. She loved people, loved to be on the go. We always used to laugh because both Jay and I were introverts by nature, but Janessa was an extrovert.
How did that happen?
We don't really know. But she just drove us forward. She was shy as a little girl, but as she grew up, she had lots of friends, and she became a real bold witness for the Lord. She loved to sing, and that's what she wanted to do with her life, becoming a recording artist. When she was 2 years old, we moved to Grand Island, Nebraska, and there is where her little brother, Jaden, was born in 1993. And he's a little brown-haired, mischievous-eyed, I think is how I would describe him. And he also loved to sing, but he loved sports, particularly soccer. So he would win soccer tournaments with his team and sing in the shower. And Janessa, occasionally she would be on a sports team, and we would cheer if she even touched the ball. And but she liked to sing in front of a group of people. So just the two personalities. Jaden had lots of friends, people who called him their best friend. But he was actually an introvert. He enjoyed spending time by himself, but he could make friends with a brick wall. So both kids loved the Lord. Both kids witnessed to their friends and were known by their faith. In the year 2000, we moved to Miami, Oklahoma, and got established in a whole new place. That was pretty difficult for the kids, but exciting for Jay and I, starting a new ministry in a new place. But it didn't take very long before everybody had new friends and were making an impact where they were. And then in 2004, both kids were in junior high, 6th grade and 8th grade. And we continued our tradition of going to Kansas for the holidays at Thanksgiving time because, you know, Jake, when you're in the ministry, you can't really be away from home at Christmas time.
Right.
So we usually celebrated Christmas at Thanksgiving. So we packed up the van and we picked the kids up from school and headed to Liberal, Kansas to celebrate Christmas with my side of the family and Thanksgiving with Jay's side of the family. And the kids were excited. So it didn't take very long on the road. It started raining. That was okay. It wasn't stormy. We got to Wichita, which was about halfway, and stopped and had supper with Jay's little brother and his family. Got on the road a little late, talked longer than we probably should have, and expected to be in Liberal by midnight. Not very far out of Wichita, the rain changed to snow, temperature started dropping. Kids were so excited. It doesn't get any better than that. You're going to grandparents for Christmas, and it's snowing, you know. We hadn't had any kind of cold weather that year yet, and so we were unconcerned about the conditions. And so we just continued on our trip. And I fell asleep in the front seat of the van. The kids were giggling in the back seat. If you have a boy and a girl that are teenagers, that's pretty miraculous. It was sweet music to me, and I just fell asleep, expecting to wake up at home. But when I woke up, my entire world had changed. Just outside of Kingman, Kansas, there's a valley, and in that valley was some black ice that no one was expecting. Pickup coming from the other way hit that black ice and crossed the center line and hit us nearly head on. And my whole world changed. I didn't understand everything that I was seeing when I woke up, partially because of the traumatic things I was seeing, also because I had had a head injury of my own in the impact. So it was a few hours later before I realized the depths of what had happened. My husband and my son were killed on impact, and my daughter died a few hours later. My whole world changed, and I was left behind. That's my story. Not the way I expected any of it to turn out. That was 14 years ago. And the journey that I've been on has taught me a great deal about faith, about who God is, about hope, and finding my way back to life. Not very long after the accident, somebody asked me, "Are you going to keep believing?" I gasped because I realized that, oh my goodness, that's how this happens. I really can just walk away. I've lived my whole life following God. I came to understand who Jesus is when I was just a child because my mom and dad believed. They took me to church, but they didn't just take me to church. I watched them study the Bible. I listened to them pray. So I learned from hearing and seeing, and it was easy to believe. So my whole life I had followed God and read the scriptures. And I think I thought that life would be good if you were good and followed God.
Right.
I was really wrong about that. I was really wrong about that. And I had learned that already because life had not been easy for the four
That'd
of
make
us.
a good bumper sticker. Life's supposed to
I
be
was
good
really
for the
wrong
Christian,
about that.
and that's wrong. So you really were asked point blank, are you going to quit believing?
When that struck me that I could just walk away,
Yeah.
I thought fear just coursed through my body. And I thought, if I do that, that means I believe there is no God. There is no life after this one. I will never see my family again. I'm choosing to believe they don't even exist anymore. There's no God who's going to walk me through this or help me. Are you kidding me? There's no way I'm walking away from my faith. All of that just washed through me. And I looked back at the person and I said, yes, I'm going to keep believing. It doesn't make sense not to.
You make such a great point, but I think anyone listening to this now and anyone who had witnessed and knew what you had been through then would say, and you could probably even say, you have more reason than anyone to give up on the faith. You had been extremely faithful to God. You and Jay had based your entire life off of serving Him. Your children did too, and they're gone. You weren't rewarded for all that you had done. You were allowed to face the most unthinkable thing. So I think you had all reason to give up on your faith.
Yes. But when you look for Him, you'll find Him. There were lots of things that happened, and even in the van, where I knew God's presence was there. When I woke up and as I began to take in the scene around me, and as I held my husband's head and tried to wake him up, there was a song that started playing in my head. People have asked me if it was on the radio at the time of the accident. I don't know. I don't have any idea. I was asleep. I just know that God placed it within me. And the first part of the song that I heard was, "Do not be afraid." And I thought, that doesn't make any sense. I am terrified. But at the same time, I knew it was God saying, don't be afraid. I remember when my husband taught my children how to swim, and they would be afraid. And he would just keep saying, I gotcha, I gotcha. And sometimes that would be tenderly firm, like, stop fighting me. I gotcha. It's okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
It was like that kind of a do not be afraid. I gotcha kind of feeling.
Loved your honesty to say, yeah, if anybody had a reason, you did. And you have revealed through our time together that it has not been easy, that it's been a struggle. But those who have watched you continue on have been in awe with just the grace that you've continued to move forward. And to hear you say in the midst of that, God was speaking to you, telling you not to be afraid, was giving you, as you mentioned at another time as we talked, that peace that transcends understanding. And as I visited with our mutual friend Rita beforehand, before we talked, she shared if there's anything to share about your story, it's how that God has stayed with you. As you just said, God's unfailing love, even in the midst of tragedy, that as we hold on, He holds us. We just began to scratch the surface here in this time. You have to check out her book, Song from a Wounded Heart. Check out her website, laurajones.com, and consider hosting her at your church to speak. Such insight. The journey didn't stop there 14 years ago, but it continues every day. And I think it's easy sometimes to hear someone walk through a story like she has and to begin to think that maybe that was easy. And it's far from it. And so I love to get insight from those who face these great trials. Insight to some of the real frustrations they face, because it is tough. But as she said, it's worth holding on. I love how straightforwardly she put it. She was point blank asked, "Are you still going to believe?" And the reason she just gave, we all need to write down. I mean, think about it. The number one thing on the list from David Sanford's research, as he shared in episode 1, the number one reason people leave is when they face difficulty. In my experience in the pastorate, that is the case. And often it's not this deliberate. Sometimes it's an anger, but then that anger just really turns into distance and just kind of fade away into the sunset. But when someone we love is gone, but we know that they had a relationship with Christ, that they're in heaven, why would we give up on God? God is the way we see them again. And He's the one that holds us together through it. Laura faced the unthinkable, and she held on. There's no reason that me or you can't hold on when we face difficulty. Thank you for listening to Hold On, my podcast where I explore the dynamics of our faith in our modern world and encourage you to keep the faith. If you've enjoyed this episode and you feel that this can make an impact with someone in your life, please share it with them. Subscribe now to keep up with the latest episodes, and visit holdonpodcast.com, or find us on Facebook at Hold On Podcast, or find me on Twitter and Instagram at StandFirmJ to find out more about how you can hold on.